It was a kind of photo you scroll past at first, but then scroll back up, unable to look away. A woman, blonde braid tucked under a wide-brimmed sun hat, stares straight into the camera. Her expression is unreadable. Not fear, not joy, just stillness. The timestamp in the corner reads, 6:47 a.m., August 12, 2017. Behind her, a narrow forest path winds into dense trees. That was the last confirmed sighting of Leah Jensen. She was a seasoned USGS cartographer, known in niche circles for her precision in topography and satellite corrections. But outside of geological circles, no one had heard of her until she walked into Red Pine National Wilderness and vanished without a sound. No distress signal, no call, no struggle, just gone. Her story, in the beginning, didn't feel like a story. It felt like a glitch. A smart, well-prepared woman walks into a known trail with GPS beacons, satellite transponders, even a backup map drawn by hand. She sends her sister a location ping. She updates her log. The forecast is clear. The route is familiar. And yet, she disappears as if swallowed by the trees. It wasn't until days later, when search crews arrived and volunteers combed through the Whispering Creek loop, that the unease began to settle in, not just because they couldn't find her, but because the forest didn't feel right. And for those who walked Red Pine since, it never has again. A meticulous woman, Leah wasn't a thrill seeker. She was calculated, raised in Flagstaff, Arizona, by a family of botanists and biologists. She grew up studying terrain maps like bedtime stories. Her colleagues describe her as the most overprepared person in any room. Before a hike, she'd researched weather patterns for the past decade, carry 3 different water purification methods, and annotate printed maps with satellite overlays. She had hiked Whispering Creek Loop before, twice. The trail was 17 miles, circling the Red Pine Reservoir and passing through a plateau known as Devil's Timber, a dense forest strip infamous for drop calls and eerie silences. But Leah didn't believe in that kind of folklore. Her plan was clear. Enter through the South Trailhead Friday at dawn, camp overnight, exit by Saturday afternoon. She logged the route in her digital map, left notes in her physical trail log, and informed her sister Monica of the plan via text and voice message. She even left a fail-safe. If no check-in came by Sunday noon, contact the Forest Service. Friday morning, Leah parked her forest green Jeep Cherokee just past the ranger station and locked it. A trail cam captured her entering at 6:43 a.m. At 6:47 a.m., another hiker snapped a casual photo of the sunrise with Leah in the frame, accidentally immortalizing her. Then nothing. Monica Jensen worked as a nurse in Durango, Colorado. She wasn't supposed to worry. Leah had done this dozens of times. But by Sunday noon, she hadn't checked in. At first, Monica thought maybe her sister had lost her phone signal. Maybe she extended the trip. But by Monday morning, that anxiety tipped into panic. She called the Forest Service. She gave them coordinates, timestamps, and Leah's known routines. The Rangers sent a team up the loop trail that afternoon. What they found was silence. Leah's boot prints were visible for nearly 8 miles, leading up to the Devil's Timber. Then nothing. No prints. No gear. No signs of camp. No sign of struggle. The trail seemed to erase her. The unspoken rule of Red Pine. For locals, Red Pine was beautiful, yes, but not welcoming. Rangers said the trees grew too thick, blocking out GPS. Some old-timers talk about an echo in certain groves, where footsteps sounded like they were being followed. Cell reception died in strange, symmetrical zones. Dogs refused to enter parts of Devil's Timber. Most dismissed it as superstition. But after Leah vanished, those stories became more than folklore. Search teams fanned out. Drones flew overhead. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed in marshy zones. Nothing, not even a scrap of clothing. Some of the search volunteers reported hearing Leah's voice faintly calling their names, only to find no source. Others claimed their compasses spun in circles near a bend in a trail marked by a gnarled pine that locals had long dubbed the Watcher. Still, nothing official made the reports. What was left behind? Leah's Jeep remained untouched. Her trail entry was logged. The satellite beacon she carried, set to ping every 2 hours, stopped transmitting at 9:08 a.m. on Friday, 2 hours after she entered. The signal was clean. No interference. Just stopped. The device was never found. Her sister Monica insisted on staying in the nearby ranger cabin. For 2 weeks, she waited, hoped, cried. She set up a memorial cross near the trailhead with a laminated photo. Hikers began to leave flowers. And soon, stories. One hiker claimed he saw Leah again, 6 months later on a different trail. She looked at me like she knew me, he said, but her face was wrong, off. Others said they'd seen a woman fitting her description, walking through Devil's Timber barefoot, silent, staring. Psychosis, maybe shared delusion, or maybe grief pulling tricks on strangers. But some sightings were eerily specific, describing her backpack's markings, her gait, the black scar on her left knee. Details never made public. A whisper in the trees. What makes Leah's case different isn't just the silence. It's the precision with which she disappeared. No gear. No animals alerted. No weather event. No human trace. One ranger, who wished to remain anonymous, said something strange into a recorder after his final sweep. The forest didn't take her. It kept her. There's a difference. Leah's story would go on to spark thousands of Reddit threads, podcast episodes, and amateur investigation videos. Everyone wanted to crack the case of the woman who walked into the woods and vanished like smoke. Some blamed wildlife, others suggested a serial predator, and a few leaned into the bizarre. Portal theories, mimic entities, time fractures. But everyone agreed on one thing. The forest changed after she entered it, and no one, not even trained rangers, hiked Whispering Creek alone again. Leah Jensen wasn't the kind of person who got lost. A U.S. Geological Survey topographer by profession, she spent much of her adult life in places maps could only dream of. Forested ridges with no cell towers. Salt flats that shimmered with mirages. Mountain valleys where GPS lost its grip. And somehow, always, she came back with data, notes, and a small, crooked smile that told the world she had once again found her way where others couldn't. But Whispering Creek was different. The trail had a reputation, not for being treacherous, but for being quiet. Too quiet, tucked in the Red Pine National Forest. It wound through 18 miles of unlogged evergreens, mossy switchbacks, and strangely straight paths that locals whispered had once been game trails. Or something older. The official literature listed it as moderate, with decent elevation and some washed-out turns near mile marker 12. But that wasn't what drew Leah. It was the silence. In her journal, recovered months later, Leah wrote, "There's something about the Whispering Creek Trail. It feels untouched, like it was forgotten on purpose." Her preparation for the solo hike was meticulous. Leah logged her route with the park office, sent a digital copy to her sister, pre-packed 2 days of freeze-dried food, a backup solar power bank, and even left behind a laminated itinerary with GPS waypoints and an emergency whistle. She was the definition of over-prepared. A satellite phone pinged her last known location at 5:52 p.m. Friday. She was at the northern loop, right where the tree cover begins to choke out the sun. After that, nothing. But before the disappearance, before the search parties and the headlines, there was Friday morning, and it was uneventful. Witnesses saw Leah purchase trail mix and jerky at the ranger station. She cracked a joke about hoping Bigfoot wasn't real. Her park permit shows a check-in time of 10:14 a.m. and a forest ranger, Donna McLean, later recalled seeing her wave as she crossed a wooden bridge into the trailhead. She had this way of looking like she belonged out there, he said. Not fearless, just calm. People like that don't just vanish. Except that's exactly what Leah did. And what happened next only deepened the mystery. When Leah didn't return by Sunday evening, her sister, Elise, tried calling. No answer. By Monday morning, the park initiated a Level 2 search. By that evening, it was Level 4. Full aerial support, canine teams, volunteers from 5 counties. And yet the forest gave them nothing. No prints, no campsite, no signs of struggle, no animal tracks, no torn clothing or broken branches. Just a still, silent forest, as if she'd walked into it and been swallowed whole. The search lasted 13 days. Helicopters scanned the forest canopy with infrared. Dogs picked up her scent at the ridge, then lost it completely, as though the air itself had changed. Volunteers spoke in hushed tones about the creeps the trail gave them. A few admitted to seeing things they couldn't explain, but nothing concrete, no leads, just silence, until day 6. That's when things got strange. A ranger found a piece of Leah's trail journal deep in a cedar hollow, 7 miles from where she was supposed to be. The page had a smear of blood on it, later determined to be animal, not human, and one line scrawled in hurried handwriting. Don't look at it too long. Authorities dismissed it as cryptic hiker shorthand or the product of dehydration. But something about the phrasing didn't sit right. Her handwriting was panicked, nearly illegible, and the page was torn, ripped, not cut. Theories began to swirl. Some said she was abducted. Others insisted she simply fell and was devoured by wildlife. But those who knew Leah knew better. She would have left signs, said Elise. A marker, a rock pile, anything. She knew better. And that's the part no one could explain. She left nothing behind. Which brings us to the question no one wants to ask, because it sounds like conspiracy theory, or worse, a ghost story. What if she didn't get lost? What if she saw something she wasn't supposed to? Some of Leah's colleagues at the Geological Survey hinted that she was following more than just topography on this trip, that she'd heard rumors, local folklore about strange magnetic readings, odd tree formations, and in one case, a looping path that returned hikers to the same clearing again and again, no matter which direction they walked. Was Leah trying to map something hidden? The recovered page of her journal wasn't the only clue. Her laptop, seized from her apartment, had multiple folders marked red pine, sublayers, and a map file with unlisted trails, ones not found in any park documentation. Some curved sharply east near mile 11, toward a ridge marked only with a question mark and the word signal. She was looking for something, and maybe she found it. We may never know what happened to Leah Jensen out there. But if you're drawn to stories like this, true account of people who vanish without a trace, mysteries that defy logic, and questions no one dares ask, you're not alone. We unravel these dark trails one story at a time. Subscribe now so you don't miss what we uncover next. Because the forest isn't done speaking. Not yet. The morning Leah Jensen disappeared. The skies were clear, a rare gift in red pine during mid-autumn. It was Friday, October 3rd, 2014. Sunrise had broken at 7:11 a.m., and Leah, ever the documentarian of her own expeditions, had logged her departure in the visitor's trail book at 7:43 a.m. sharp. Her entry was neat and meticulous. Looping Whispering Creek Trail. 2-night solo. Will radio and daily. Leah J. No frills. Just facts. What made this disappearance different from the dozens of lost hiker incidents across the American backwoods each year was Leah's profound preparation. She wasn't just another weekend backpacker. She was a specialist who understood terrain and time as fluid variables. According to her sister Nora, Leah even had weather contingency scripts, pre-written plans for what to do depending on whether it rained, snowed, or she encountered trail collapse. Everything pointed to a routine trip. Her first radio check-in came at 5:31 p.m. Friday evening. She was camping near a landmark known as Echo Basin, a shallow ravine carved by glacial runoff. Her voice, according to Park Ranger Travis McNeil, was calm and clear. She reported minor wind shear, dry trails, and good pace. McNeil said, No concerns. We logged her GPS ping and moved on. Then nothing. Saturday passed. No call. No signal. Still, it wasn't yet cause for alarm. Solo hikers sometimes skip to check in. Perhaps her radio died. Maybe she camped deeper in the basin where reception thinned. But Sunday came and went. No Leah. On Monday morning, McNeil logged her as a potential overdue return. By policy, the window for an active missing persons investigation wouldn't open until Tuesday at noon. But Leah's sister had already driven 4 hours from Spokane and was parked at the Red Pine Ranger Station by 9:15 a.m., pounding on the glass. She would never break her own rules, Nora insisted. Never. If you knew Leah, you'd know something is wrong. At precisely 1:42 p.m., the Ranger team authorized search phase 1. By 3 p.m., 12 trained SAR volunteers began combing the Whispering Creek Loop in sections. The route is divided into quadrants, each spanning up to 4.2 miles. They started with the northeast section, where Leah last reported. Dogs were deployed. Drones hovered. Emergency call-out posts were triggered in case Leah was injured and signaling manually. By nightfall, they found nothing. No campsite, no food wrappers, no footprints, not even a broken twig that seemed out of place. And so began one of the strangest and most frustrating wilderness searches the Pacific Northwest had ever recorded. On Tuesday morning, 7:15 a.m., they expanded to Phase 2. Helicopters were brought in from Walla Walla and Pendleton. Rangers surveyed the area for signs of distressed foliage, makeshift fires, or reflective gear. The problem? Leah wasn't your average hiker. She didn't leave trash. She didn't blaze trees. Her gear was color-blended to the terrain. She was too good, said SAR volunteer Victor Ramirez. Most people we find because they're messy. Leah, she was invisible. It was day 3 of the search when they found something. Ranger McNeil stumbled upon a small, compacted area of flattened grass roughly 4 miles from Echo Basin, off-trail. In the center was a single titanium peg from a tent stake. Nearby, in a hollow of brush, searchers discovered a torn segment of green nylon. A 3-inch scrap, jagged at the edge, consistent with Leah's known tent model. It should have been hopeful. Instead, it was unnerving. There were no other signs of a camp, said McNeil. No fire pit. No food remains. No footprints. Just that stake and scrap. Like someone packed up, but left only that behind. Dogs were brought back to the area. They sniffed, circled, and whined, then refused to proceed further west of the hollow. They acted like they hit a wall. One handler reported. Not like they were afraid. Like they couldn't scent anymore. Like it just stopped. But human scent doesn't stop like that. Not unless the body was transported. Or disappeared. Whispering Creek Loop, for all its scenic beauty, hides pockets of danger. There are sudden sinkholes that collapse after storms. Predator sightings, cougars, black bears, had been reported in the past. But nothing in the trail conditions indicated an active risk that weekend. Besides, Leah was armed with bear spray, a flare gun, and a multi-tool machete. If she were attacked, there would be signs of struggle, blood, tracks disturbance. There was nothing. By day 6, the official search began winding down. Volunteers were exhausted. Equipment had been drained and refueled twice. An unspoken sense of futility hung in the air. But then, something happened that changed the nature of the case entirely. On Thursday morning, a 17-year-old backpacker named Dylan Holt stumbled into Ranger Post 3 with a pale face and shaking hands. He was hiking solo along a feeder path to Whispering Creek and had camped near Echo Basin the night before. He claimed to have seen a woman. She was just standing there, he said, at the edge of the creek, wearing a red scarf, pale skin, hair tied back. She looked at me, tilted her head like she didn't know if I was real, and then walked into the trees. A red scarf. Leah had been photographed wearing a deep crimson scarf the morning she left. Rangers returned to the location Dylan described. No footprints. No fabric. Nothing. But the story spread. Suddenly, Leah wasn't just missing. She was seen. Or something that looked like her was. In the weeks that followed, multiple campers came forward with odd reports. Glimpses of a woman, fast vanishing between trees. Seen only at dawn or dusk. Always near Echo Basin. Always silent. Always gone before anyone could reach her. Some said it was trauma-induced hallucination. Others believed it was a copycat prank. But one thing was now clear. Leah's disappearance had crossed from logistical nightmare to full-blown mystery. And Red Pine Forest was no longer a place people visited without hesitation. For the first 24 hours, no one panicked. It wasn't uncommon for solo hikers to be delayed, especially seasoned ones like Leah Jensen. Park rangers had seen it countless times. A dead battery, a twisted ankle, or simply a stubborn signal that delayed contact. But when Monday afternoon rolled into evening and the satellite ping Leah had scheduled for 2 p.m. didn't arrive, her supervisor at the U.S. Geological Survey, Maria Chun, grew uneasy. She tried to rationalize it. Leah had likely taken a detour. Or maybe she was camping longer than planned. But as darkness descended over Whispering Creek and no messages came through, Maria made the call that would trigger the largest backcountry search in that region of Oregon in over a decade. By dawn on Tuesday, search and rescue teams had mobilized. The first crew of volunteers, made up of rangers, search dog, and wilderness responders, swept the northern quadrant of Whispering Creek. The area Leah was supposed to emerge from, near trail marker 17, was littered with ferns, moss-covered trees, and dense brush. It was unforgiving terrain, but Leah had logged over 100 hours of similar hikes in tougher environments. Her absence didn't make sense. "We thought we'd find her within hours," said Deputy Alan Murrow, a search team leader with 12 years of SAR experience. She had gear, knowledge, and marked her route. That usually leads to a quick recovery. But by nightfall, no one had seen a single boot print, piece of gear, or any broken branches. No wildlife had been disturbed. The trail looked untouched. On Wednesday, they brought in aerial drones and thermal imaging. Helicopters scanned the entire 72-square-mile preserve, following both Leah's planned route and common detours known to experienced hikers. The forest canopy made thermal detection difficult, but search dogs on the ground still had no reaction. No scent trail. No alerts. Then came something unnerving. Several handlers reported their dogs refusing to enter a low ravine just east of mile marker 13. One bloodhound, trained in cadaver and live scent detection, growled and backed away from the edge. Another whimpered and laid down. It wasn't typical behavior, and it rattled even the most seasoned teams. Ranger Neil Hoffman, who'd helped map that section of the trail a few years prior, volunteered to descend alone. He returned an hour later, pale and tight-lipped. "There's nothing down there," he muttered. "But I swear I wasn't alone." Searchers began sharing strange reports. One group near Firewatch Ridge swore they saw a flicker of movement behind a line of trees, tall, lean, humanoid. But when they reached the area seconds later, it was empty. Another crew radioed in about Whispering, faint and garbled, drifting through the trees with no identifiable source. A few brushed it off as paranoia. Others noted the forest's acoustics could produce strange echoes. But for those in the thick of the search, it was more than tricks of the mind. It felt like the woods were hiding something. Thursday brought the first official press conference. Sheriff Marla Kincaid stepped up to the podium outside the ranger station. "At this time, we have no indication of foul play," she said, "but we are pursuing all possibilities. Ms. Jensen is an experienced hiker. We remain hopeful." The media responded swiftly. Leah wasn't just another missing hiker. She was a federal scientist with a spotless record and strong social media presence. By Friday, her case was national news. Volunteers surged. Dozens of people, including hikers Leah had mentored, traveled from across the country to assist. Drones, infrared scanners, motion-triggered cameras. They tried everything. But every day ended the same. No footprints, no gear, no trace. Not even broken twigs or snagged fabric on the underbrush. It was like she'd vanished mid-step. The Whispering Creek preserve was closed to the public by Saturday. Rumors grew quickly. Some said she ran away, staged her disappearance, but she left her passport, bank cards, and car behind. Others whispered of wild animals, road campers, or illegal activity deep in the woods. But none of the signs pointed in that direction. There was no blood, no torn clothes, no signs of struggle. "I've done this for 22 years, said Ranger Hoffman. When someone gets lost, they leave clues. A candy wrapper, a broken branch. You find something. But this is like she was picked up and erased. Then came the event that stopped the search cold. On the 7th day, a ranger, Dale Kingsley, was leading a 2-man team toward a section known as Widow's Path, a park preserve rarely used due to poor trail conditions. Kingsley's partner went ahead to scale a low-rise. When he returned 10 minutes later, Kingsley was gone. At first, they assumed he'd stepped off to relieve himself or scout another path. But after 2 hours of calling his name, with no radio response and no trace, panic set in. Reinforcements were called. They found him after midnight, 2 miles from where he'd last been seen, shivering behind a fallen log. Kingsley couldn't explain how he'd gotten there. "I was following something," he said. "Or someone. I thought it was Leah. I saw her. She was walking ahead of me, barefoot. I yelled, but she didn't turn. Then she disappeared into the trees." He suffered from mild hypothermia and was taken off the search. His statements were dismissed by some as stress-induced hallucinations, but others weren't so sure. The next day, a new directive came down. All future search efforts would be scaled back. Whispering Creek was deemed too unstable and too dangerous to continue at full force. Public statements were issued citing weather conditions and wildlife risk. Privately, many on the ground suspected another reason. Whispering Creek was hiding something, and it didn't want to be found. By the end of week 2, the official search was suspended. Family and friends were devastated, but without new leads or evidence, there was nothing more authorities could do. Leah Jensen, one of the most competent hikers in the Pacific Northwest, had simply ceased to exist in the space between Trail Marker 9 and Trail Marker 14, a zone barely 1.5 miles wide. But the story was far from over, because months later, just as the leaves turned and the forest prepared for winter, someone found her backpack, intact, perfectly preserved, and resting on a rock in an area that had already been searched 3 times. And inside it was a map, but not one anyone had ever seen before. At first, the volunteers brushed it off. Whispers in the wind, the sound of twigs snapping just beyond their sight line. Typical tricks the forest plays on the anxious mind. After all, the Whispering Creek Loop got its name for a reason. The way the wind funnels through the pines produces a constant, hushed murmur that sounds like voices if you listen too long. But by day 4, even the most seasoned search and rescue teams were growing uneasy. Logan Bryce, a 12-year veteran of Montana's Mountain Rescue Unit, described it like this: "I've worked Glacier, I've worked Yellowstone. I've pulled people off ice fields and led searches after avalanches. But I've never had this feeling before. Like the woods didn't want us there." The search had expanded outward from Leah's last known location. Her photo captured entry into the trailhead. Despite grid-style mapping and GPS-coordinated zones, the forest seemed to shift around them. Teams reported encountering sudden dead ends, their compass readings misaligning by as much as 30 degrees. Drones lost signal, without explanation. Even the K-9 units behaved strangely. One trained bloodhound refused to move past a specific boundary, barking into the trees, as though confronting something could smell but not see. "We thought maybe a bear was close," said Callie Renner, a wildlife officer with the Department of Fish and Game. But the air was too still. No scat, no tracks, just silence. And that dog, tail tucked, growling at nothing. Silence was something many began to notice. A strange, pressing quiet unlike any other forest setting. No birdsong, no rustling, as if the trees themselves held their breath. That silence, volunteers noted, often preceded their unsettling experiences. One man, Caleb Wright, a park maintenance worker who joined the search on day 5, said he saw someone standing just inside the tree line, wearing all red with no visible face, like blank. When he blinked, they were gone. Another hiker, Tanya Rees, described the echo of someone crying behind her as she walked alone towards Search Zone C. But it was weird, like the cry was looping, not changing, just the same 6 or 7 seconds over and over again. When I turned, no one was there. Many of these reports were never formally logged. Superstition, it seemed, could contaminate the efficiency of a search. But as more strange stories piled up, Operations Command quietly marked the area between Marker 27 and the old mining trail as a closed zone. It wasn't public information at the time. Only a few dozen people knew, and even fewer dared to enter it. Despite their fear, they still searched. The terrain grew wilder, more difficult to navigate. Brambles pulled at pant legs, and patches of earth felt loose, almost hollow. It was on the 6th day of the search that they stumbled upon what would become a cornerstone of Leah's mystery, a grove of scorched trees deep in the northwest quadrant, seemingly struck by lightning but with no storm on record that week. The trees weren't just burnt. They were blackened from the inside out. An odd, chemical smell lingered in the air, and in the dirt at the base of the tallest tree. Someone had left a crude stone figure, a human-shaped totem with a jagged smile carved into the face. No one took it. They didn't want to touch it. Photos were taken, logged, and quietly handed off to the authorities. Then, something unexpected happened. Day 7. The search abruptly stopped. No official reason was given. The local sheriff's office issued a brief statement. Due to hazardous terrain and potential weather-related risks, we are suspending volunteer operations until further notice. But the skies were clear. The terrain hadn't changed. Something else had prompted the halt. Rumors swirled among the volunteer ranks. A ranger had gone missing for 18 hours, found wandering barefoot along Route 89 with no memory of where he'd been. One of the K-9 units collapsed after a seizure. A private drone pilot reviewing footage from his flyover noticed something chilling. A figure moving just beneath the tree canopy, but it wasn't walking. It glided, smooth and fast, until vanishing behind the tree line. Some of the volunteers began to speak of them. Not bears, not wolves, something else. Tall, silent, always just out of view. One SAR member, who asked to remain anonymous, claimed they heard a voice late at night during the base camp rotation. It was Leah, they said. I'm sure of it. She was calling for help. But her voice was wrong, like it had no breath behind it. By the end of the week, half the volunteers had packed up. The rest were quietly dismissed. Whispering Creek Loop was barricaded. The official explanation was unpredictable ecological instability, citing a risk of landslides. But locals knew better. This isn't the first time people disappeared in that forest, said Marion Gully, a resident of West Elms. Back in '94, a boy vanished during a school trip. They said he slipped in the ravine, but they never found him. Same area. Park records, at least those still accessible, suggest several disappearances dating back to the 1950s had occurred along the same trail corridor, each separated by years, sometimes decades, but always the same pattern. Experienced outdoors people vanishing without a trace, in calm weather, with no distress signal, no sign of a struggle. Some started calling it the red pine pattern. And within that pattern, Leah's case was beginning to take on a life of its own. Locals now avoided the forest's northern edge. A few online forums began circulating a low-res version of the final photo of Leah Jensen, her at the trailhead, with something barely visible in the tree line behind her. It didn't take long for the internet to grab hold. Cryptid theorists, paranormal enthusiasts, Reddit sleuths, all trying to decipher what might be hiding in those woods. But the authorities said nothing, and Whispering Creek remained silent. Next came the winter. Snow swallowed the trail, and with it, any hope that Leah might have simply gotten lost. But in April, 7 months after her disappearance, something washed up downstream that reignited everything. Not Leah, not her body, but her backpack, still zipped, still intact, and inside a journal and a map drawn in her handwriting. But it didn't look like any map of Red Pine the world had ever seen. It was distorted, and something was circled in red again and again, a single word written beneath it: home. Leah Jensen was not the first. That realization hit hard, like the bite of frost creeping under a parka collar. As the media quieted down and the official search scaled back, a fringe community of armchair detectives and ex-rangers began connecting dots that had long been dismissed or buried in red tape. The disappearance of Leah reawakened whispers of the forest past, a history that didn't appear in official pamphlets or trailhead signage. Between 1987 and 1996, 5 individuals vanished in or near the same 10-mile radius of Whispering Creek Loop. Most were solo hikers, all experienced. Their cases bore uncanny similarities. No sign of a struggle. Gear often left behind, GPS and radio logs showing confusing or impossible data. Each search was extensive. Each ended in nothing. The earliest known case was James Jimbo McKay, an amateur botanist and Vietnam veteran. In 1987, he took a weekend trip to catalog wild flora for a university project. His last known position was logged by an analog trail camera about 2 miles from where Leah's pack would later be found, almost 36 years to the day. That footage was never made public, but a park maintenance worker who viewed it described something strange. He looked over his shoulder like he heard something, then started sprinting. Full sprint. The camera cut off a second later. In 1990, an anthropology grad student named Rebecca Yoon disappeared while tracing indigenous folklore trails. Her thesis focused on stories told by the Moonaki people, an obscure tribe with very little surviving oral history. Her journals, recovered weeks later in a weathered tent, included disturbing sketches of humanoid figures with hollow eyes and impossibly long limbs. Experts called it a stress-induced breakdown. The locals called it a sign. Then there was the Parkhurst family in 1993, parents and a 12-year-old son, who vanished while on a multi-day trek. Their campsite was found perfectly intact. Tents zipped, firewood stacked, food untouched. Their car remained parked neatly at the trailhead. Not a trace of them was ever discovered, and search dogs reportedly refused to step past a certain ridgeline, whining and tugging their handlers backward. All these cases have been individually written off, unsolved but isolated, until Leah's disappearance cracked the silence. Her story carried weight, not just because of her professionalism, but because it happened in the digital age. People were watching, tracking, demanding answers. Online forums sprang up, comparing timestamps, trail maps, GPS logs. The overlapping territory formed a rough hexagon around Whispering Creek, a dead zone of sorts. Some locals began calling it the Hollow. The park rangers didn't encourage the nickname, but they didn't challenge it either. One retired forest officer, Frank Collier, appeared on a podcast under a pseudonym and said bluntly, "That land never wanted us there. You think it's coincidence we lose signal in the same spots every time? Radios go quiet. GPS blinks out. But compasses spin." By late 2024, one curious anomaly began making rounds. Every single missing person case had at least one report of odd echoes. Not typical echo effects, but eerily human mimicry. According to transcripts from SAR teams, several volunteers heard their own voices repeated back to them in the brush. Not like an echo bouncing off stone, but as though someone or something was imitating them. "I called out for Rebecca," one team member wrote in a debrief. Then, 20 seconds later, I heard her voice, my voice, yell back. It wasn't an echo. It was mocking me. The most chilling of all came from a ranger who claimed to have seen a person moving through the trees at unnatural speed. Too quick to be human. He described it as a flicker in the periphery, like something trying not to be seen but failing for a second. When he returned to camp, visibly shaken, his boots were soaked though he hadn't crossed any water. Leah's photo at the entrance to Red Pine had something no other case had, a timestamp and a record of her route. Investigators analyzed satellite data and trail cameras for a 48-hour window. What they found only deepened the mystery. Leah passed the expected first checkpoint at 11:42 a.m. and then nothing. The next camera, just a mile deeper into the forest, did not pick her up, but at 11:59 a.m. it triggered anyway. Footage showed dense forest. No animal, no bird, just wind. But precisely at the edge of frame, near a patch of moss-covered birch, a faint outline appeared, like heat distortion in the shape of a person. Investigators claimed it was a lens flare. Cryptologists online weren't so sure. One tech-savvy sleuth ran image analysis and outlined what he believed to be limbs, elongated, bent at awkward angles, humanoid in silhouette, but wrong in proportion. The footage, of course, was later removed from public access, pending investigation. By now, people were coming to Red Pine not just to hike, but to look, to see what Leah may have seen. A group of paranormal investigators spent a week camping deep within Whispering Creek territory and returned with a single story they all corroborated. At 3:12 a.m., one of them awoke to the sound of twigs snapping outside their tent. When he stepped out with flashlight, he saw what looked like Leah, same jacket, same short haircut, standing completely still about 20 feet away. He called her name. She didn't move. Then, in a blink, she was gone. They tore through the woods for hours and found no footprints. A few believed Leah had been targeted by whatever force haunted the hollow. Others thought she stumbled into something ancient, a place not meant for people, a natural tear in reality. The Moonachie folklore Rebecca had studied seemed to back this up. According to her recovered notes, their elders warned of mirror walkers, forest spirits that wore the faces of the lost to lure others in. Whether myth or metaphor, one thing was certain: Leah wasn't alone. Whatever mystery had claimed her had done so before, and if the pattern held, it would happen again. The forest wasn't done. 7 months passed. Autumn bled into a bitter winter. Red Pine Ridge closed its northern trails, first due to weather, then due to fear. No remains, no bones, no new leads. Leah Jensen's name faded from headlines, but lived like a breath held too long in the lungs of Red Pine's locals. She had become something of a whispered legend, not quite ghost story, not quite tragedy, but something unfinished and dangerous. Then, on the cusp of spring, a break. It was March 25th, 2022, during what was known as the Blood Moon Hike, a guided moonlit excursion for amateur stargazers in the southern quadrant of the park, a good 12 miles south of where Leah was last believed to be. A couple named Vince and Carla Hollister were trailing behind the group. Carla needed to use the bathroom, though in Red Pine that meant veering into the woods with a flashlight and hope. She didn't make it far. Carla stopped cold about 40 feet off trail, her flashlight catching on something out of place. It was a faded blue hiking backpack, the kind with a USGS patch stitched on, mud-streaked, moss-covered, one strap broken. She screamed for Vince. Rangers arrived in under an hour. It was Leah Jensen's, intact, dry, unbelievably well-preserved. Inside were her journal, 2 protein bars, a topographic map that didn't match Red Pine's known grid, and a GPS device that still flickered weakly to life. The most curious item was the journal. More accurately, the journal entries that appeared after her last known day. March 3rd. I lost the trail. No, not lost. Redirected. The markers are wrong. I know this area. I mapped it, but the terrain isn't matching the file. My compass needle is spinning even when I hold still. It's like it doesn't know where we are. Or when March 4th, heard whistling again last night, not from the direction of the ranger station. 3 blasts, then silence. My fire won't stay lit. Something's moving above me, but there are no trees. Sky's too dark, no stars. March 6th, I woke up in the same place I set camp the night before, but I didn't sleep here. I walked 11 hours south yesterday. I know I did. The GPS shows no movement at all. I saw my own tent already pitched. I think I've been here longer than I realize. March 7th, I saw another me. Same clothes, same pack. She was walking parallel to me, but about 20 feet away, never looking back. I called out. She didn't stop. Then I wasn't sure if she was the one calling me. March 8th, the creek ran uphill today. I have it on video. Not that it matters. The camera's been dead for days, but it turns on when I'm not looking. I think I'm writing for someone. I think someone else is reading this as I write it. March 9th, I'm not sure if I'm still Leah. March 10th, no entry. That was the last page. Forensic analysis confirmed the journal was untouched by weather. Ink dry. Pages undamaged, even after months in the wild. No animal bites. No mildew. The topographic map in the bag was an official USGS release. But Leah had drawn it herself, based on GPS tracking logs embedded in her field tablet, which had mysteriously powered on when the backpack was opened, despite a dead battery. One route on the map was circled in red, labeled in Leah's handwriting, 12-fold path. The strange part? That trail didn't exist. But rangers cross-referencing her hand-drawn map with an 1889 forestry chart of Red Pine Ridge found a match. An old cattle trail, abandoned for more than a century, burned over during the wildfire of 1911, thought to be unreachable and undocumented in any modern system. The line on Leah's map was precise, like she'd walked it. A week after the backpack discovery, a small team of experienced rangers followed Leah's marked path, out of both obligation and superstition. They never found the trail. In fact, GPS showed they were never more than 500 yards from a main loop, but they did find something else. A clearing, almost too perfect, like something had been cleared deliberately. In the center, a circle of stones, arranged in a spiral, fresh ash at the core, a pile of bones, animal, they assumed, placed at the spiral center. But the disturbing part wasn't what they saw. It was what they heard. One ranger, Marcus Duval, claimed his radio picked up intermittent static bursts. Then a voice, female, repeating a phrase. Map the silence. Chart the echo. Follow yourself. Another ranger heard nothing. The audio recorder later recovered from Duval's vest captured only wind. They left the clearing quickly. That night, Duval checked himself into a hospital in Missoula, claimed he was being followed by a mirror that doesn't wait for you. He left Montana a week later and hasn't spoken publicly since. The journal, the map, and the GPS were turned over to state officials. The park reopened a month later, with new warnings, stricter trail limitations, and unspoken anxiety. But online, the find reignited the obsession. Podcasters, armchair investigators, cryptid enthusiasts, and temporal anomaly theorists all weighed in. Some believed Leah had slipped into a parallel space. Others thought the journal was a hoax planted to keep her case alive. A few claimed to have walked parts of the 12-fold path and described feeling like they were caught in a dream without a center. But the question no one could answer was the same that haunted Leah's colleagues and friends. If she survived long enough to write those entries, why didn't she walk out? And if she didn't survive, who circled that trail in red? For a case so thoroughly scoured by journalists, investigators, and hikers alike, it seemed impossible that something new could surface. And yet, 9 months after Leah vanished into Red Pine National Park, a photo emerged that made even the most rational mind shiver. It came anonymously, slid under the door of a small-town newspaper editor in Elkridge. No envelope, no note, just a single glossy image, printed on outdated thermal paper, creased and curling at the edges. On the back, someone had scrawled in block letters. She saw them. Now they see U.S. The editor, Ellen Kramer, almost threw it out. It looked like a poor quality still from a trail cam, until she turned it over and read that chilling message. The timestamp on the bottom right corner read, April 18th, 34, 2:12 a.m. 1934? That had to be a mistake. Surely. But the trees in the photo matched the contours and arrangement of those found along Whispering Creek Loop. In the center of the image was a figure. Female, mid-stride, dark ponytail, and unmistakably wearing the same cobalt hiking jacket Leah Jensen was last seen in. More disturbing than the jacket, however, was the blurred silhouette that trailed her. Nearly 7 feet tall, head lowered, humanoid but not human. Its arms looked elongated, its legs slightly bent backwards, like a deer caught mid-run. The face, if you could call it that, was entirely obscured in shadow. Kramer showed the photo to local rangers, who dismissed it as a hoax. But when she brought it to David Lamb, a retired USGS analyst and map archivist who had worked with Leah years earlier, his response was immediate. "That jacket," he said, adjusting his glasses. "That's the REI Summit Show. Custom color. Only 8 were issued that year, and Leah's had a patch on the right shoulder. See that faint spot there? Indeed, the blurry that aligned exactly with Leah's known jacket patch, an Appalachian Trail crest. Still, that timestamp, 1934, that made no sense. Thermal photo printers weren't invented until the 1960s. Yet the timestamp wasn't embedded digitally. It was imprinted in faded ink, as if pressed by an old-fashioned film lab. Ellen Kramer handed the image to forensic analysts. Their conclusion: the paper was authentic thermal stock from the 1980s, yet aged as if it had been stored somewhere extremely dry and oxygen-poor for decades. No evidence of tampering. No layers, no inconsistencies in ink density. Then came the second shock. A local historian, Jonah Bray, saw the image during a podcast interview Kramer agreed to. He recognized a strange shape behind Leah. "I've seen that before," he said. In the 1934 journals from the Red Pine Surveying Expedition, Leah had once referenced those exact documents in her field notes. Jonah retrieved a brittle, yellowed notebook from a locked cabinet at the Elkridge Historical Society. In it, a geologist named Dr. Harold Merton had written, "Saw the figure again. Taller than any man. Legs wrong. No sound when it walks. Jenkins swore it whispered his name last night. Mapping postponed. Area uninhabitable. There were even crude sketches. One drawing looked almost identical to the blurred shape in the photo. Elongated limbs, backward-kneed legs, hollowed shadow where a face should be." Merton's final entry read, "We are not alone in this place. We never were, and now it knows we see it." He died weeks later in a rockfall, the only member of the 1934 survey team whose body was never recovered. Suddenly, Leah's disappearance wasn't just a tragic solo hiker mystery. It wasn't just an accident or a cold case puzzle. It was part of a long-forgotten pattern, a cycle of vanishings, strange sightings, and entities that seemed to emerge only when someone dared to chart or document this place too closely. And Leah? Maybe she got too close. Then, in late winter, Leah's brother, Mark, received a package. No return address. Inside, a black SD card and a folded note written in Leah's handwriting. "Mark, if you get this, I'm okay. I think I found something in the park. Something real. Don't come looking. Please. You won't find me. They watch the ones who look." The SD card held only one image. This one wasn't blurry. It showed Leah crouched beneath a pine tree, eyes wide and alert, a finger pressed to her lips. Behind her, faint in the tree lean, was something, but even pixel-by-pixel enhancement couldn't reveal its shape. It was like the photo rejected clarity, the way oil resists water. Metadata on the image said it was taken from a model camera Leah had never carried, and the time code was missing. Not scrambled, just blank. Digital forensics confirmed one thing. The image had not been edited. Whatever its source, it was genuine. The public never saw this one. Mark handed it to authorities, but copies leaked. Forums lit up. Some called it a modern cryptic case. Others said it was all AI manipulation. But those who knew Leah, the geologists, the cartographers, the backcountry rangers, felt something colder settle in their bones. Because Leah had spent her life mapping what others ignored. She chased facts, not fantasy. And if someone like her had said, "Don't come looking," maybe that was the only truth we needed. Still, they couldn't help but ask, what had she seen? And where had she gone? Was she hiding? Trapped? Or had she become something else entirely? Some even began whispering online that those who looked at the image too long reported hearing whispers at night, that a few had received missed calls from unknown numbers, always at 2:12 a.m. That's the exact timestamp from that first strange photo. Coincidence? Or warning? The Red Pine Preserve closed indefinitely on August 17, 2023. The official reason was unpredictable environmental hazards, but everyone knew the real cause, Leah Jensen, or more accurately, the vacuum she left behind. After 7 months of whispers, sightings, and dead ends, she was more myth than missing woman. Her face posted across ranger stations and conspiracy forums. Her story dissected by hikers, skeptics, and believers alike. But as the last chapter of this tragedy began to close, the forest itself seemed unwilling to forget. Just 10 days after the park was shut down, 2 experienced hikers from Colorado, married couple Chris and Nadine Traeger, slipped under the fence near Trail 19. They weren't thrill seekers. Chris had worked wildfire containment for 15 years. Nadine was a botanist who'd once contributed to Leah Jensen's fieldwork. They claimed they weren't trying to find Leah. They were trying to find what she found. They never made it to Whispering Creek. Their GPS signal stopped transmitting near the same broken pine marker that Leah had mapped in her journal. A week later, rangers found Chris stumbling barefoot out of the woods, bloodied, incoherent, and missing 3 fingernails. His wife was never found. When Chris was medically cleared to speak, he offered one phrase before going silent again. Don't answer if it sounds like someone you love. That was enough to restart every theory, every forum thread, every midnight debate. Was it a natural anomaly? Something geological? Acoustic? Or was there truly something watching? Something mimicking, waiting for a response? The strange photograph recovered in Leah's pack remained one of the biggest sources of debate. An analyst from the University of Oregon's Digital Forensics Lab concluded that the timestamp, 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m. on a Friday in April, was digitally correct but not possible. The ambient light in the photo suggested midday. The shadows were cast in 2 opposing directions, and the man standing near the tree line, face turned just slightly from the lens, had no visible pupils. Some believed Leah staged it. Others argued it was part of her ritualistic misdirection, a concept from fringe survivalist groups that claimed she was trying to draw attention away from a government project operating in the closed zones of Red Pine. Still others said it was proof she saw what took the others. But there was one detail that never made it to the news. When the photo was enhanced at 400% zoom, forensic software caught a distortion behind the trees, just left of the figure. A slight warping of the branches, like heat rising off asphalt. And in that distortion, something that almost looked like Leah's face. Blurred, mouth open, eyes locked on a lens. Only one person who analyzed the photo still speaks about it publicly. John Rivera, a former cartographer and now an independent investigator, published a digital paper entitled Echo Points, the Jensen Coordinates. He claims the entire Whispering Creek loop forms a near-perfect Fibonacci spiral when plotted with Leah's discovered map. He says this is no accident. These places, he said in a podcast episode, are older than memory. Red pine isn't just a place you vanish in. It's a place that learns you. It doesn't let go because it doesn't have to. The journal entries in Leah's recovered notebook ended abruptly. The last entry was undated and written in shaky, smeared graphite. Whatever this is, it's not trying to kill me. It's trying to remember me. If I keep still, I think it forgets. If I move, it finds me again. But I can't stop moving now. I have to draw it away from the others. Please tell my sister I left a note in the silver med kit. If I don't come back, tell her the password is Junebug. She'll know what to do. That silver med kit was never found. Her sister, Leah Jensen, told authorities there was no known relevance to the word Junebug. But in a public Reddit AMA, she added a final haunting note. Leah never called me Avery. She always called me Junebug. Only her. No one else. So if Leah meant her, who were the others? The forest, of course, holds its silence. Nature has no obligation to explain. And red pine remains sealed behind state barricades, a decaying welcome sign flanked by fading missing posters. But that hasn't stopped people from trying to get in. And it certainly hasn't stopped the sightings. A bow hunter in late 2024 reported seeing a woman standing too still near the tree line of Trail 6. He shouted to her. She didn't move. He lifted his phone to take a picture, and in the frame, she was suddenly right behind him. He ran, left everything behind. When rangers recovered his gear, they found his phone completely wiped, except one image had been burned into the memory, a grainy photo of a face. Wide eyes, pale, unsmiling, pressed against what looked like fog glass. The metadata said the file was last modified April 14th, 23, 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m., the same time Leah's photo was taken. So what really happened to Leah Jensen? Was she the final piece of a natural puzzle? A victim of a phenomenon we've yet to understand? Or did she willingly disappear, becoming part of something ancient, vast, and waiting? No one knows for sure. But if you ever hike Red Pine again, assuming the gates reopen, assuming the forest allows it, watch for trail markers that have been turned backward. Don't follow them. And if you hear someone call your name from ahead on the path, don't respond, even if it sounds like someone you trust. Because sometimes a forest doesn't take people. Sometimes it just remembers them. If this chilling journey into Leah Jensen's disappearance captivated you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more real-life mysteries, more haunting truths, and more dark corners of the world waiting to be explored. Together, subscribe now to stay in the loop. You never know what might surface next.